Shalom, saints. Good morning and good afternoon to some. It is now past noon on Eastern Standard Time, so it is good afternoon to many. It is still a good morning to me and the people that are in my time zone. I want to say welcome. I want to say shalom, peace to you all, and I pray that this message receives you in good timing. Yes, I am a little bit late, but that's because my brother Nigel was preaching. He came up with an emergency word, and he had to deliver something, and I don't mind those things, when sometimes we have plans, but sometimes when something has to change real quick, I know it was a lesson to me as well too, because I know I was given this word last night. I was supposed to speak on this last night, and it came up now, and as I was going to hit play, it says Nigel is broadcasting. So it is very interesting to me that I gave out the post last night and said I'll be preaching today at 12 Eastern Time, and in the minute I'm going on, Nigel comes on right before I come on. So again, it was more confirmation to me as I know that I was probably supposed to deliver this last night, but I felt it was too late. Again, it would have been, wow, that's very interesting, those 12 hours. It would have been 12 o'clock last night for you guys on the Eastern Standard Time. It would have been 12 o'clock last night for you to have heard this sermon, and I was going to preach it at 12 o'clock today, or 10 for me and 10 for you guys today, or 10 for me this morning. But it's very interesting how the Lord works in very different ways to confirm a message that had to go out. But shalom to all of you. Again, for those that are here, share. For those that feel the need, I'm going to show you something about the Father never changing. I'm going to show you something about the Father always being the same, as much as how important it is to follow His commandment, even as to worship, even as to even give your offering or your sacrifice, the chosen place. You need to understand the chosen place is a commanded will of the Father as well too. And again, I'm going to prove this to you from the Tanakh. I'm going to prove it to you from the new letters. I'm going to show you some things that the Father hasn't changed in His commanding of the chosen place. I'm going to be in the scriptures today of Devarim, which some of you would call Deuteronomy. I'm going to be in Romans. I'm going to be in Corinthians. I'm also going to be in 2 Kepha, who some of you would call 2 Peter. But I'm going to prove to you how important it is to obey the command in worship and offering, to obey the command. What is an offering but a sacrifice? To obey who and how and where, and how important it is that these things are commands and not just to do it as we please. Many people that want to argue with Nigel, myself, and Cleveland, and Brother Bassoon, and the ones that are preaching this true message always want to argue with us about a specific thing. You've heard me say it before about this relative truth, or what I believe, or that's what you believe, or I'm going to worship my God my way. Well, I'm here to tell you that we worship an all-sovereign, almighty, one Father in heaven, and He does it His way or no way, and we are commanded to do it His way or no way. Many people have heard me say that we only can worship the way He says, but not the way we want to. We're not allowed to worship. If we worship the way we want to, the Scripture says very clearly that we worship in vain. Even in the old prophets, it says that He heard the pitter pattering of feet in His temple courtyard. Folks, He heard them. He heard them. He even said that they even gave sacrifice, but He had no pleasure in them. You need to understand that we have to do it His way. We have to do it His way and not any other way. So again, we're going to start in Devarim this morning to show you what I mean, and that this path of consistency has been the truth since the beginning. This is what some of you would call Deuteronomy, and this is before they cross over the River Yarm, which some of you would say Jordan. This is before they're about to go into the land that He's dispossessing the people out of, that He's given them their promised land. And this is before He's about to tell them where to worship. Again, we see in Acts, not in Acts, but in Yochanan, and the woman's talking to the Messiah. Again, this is part of it too. She's talking to the Messiah in Yochanan 4, the Gospel according to Yochanan in chapter 4. And she's saying, well, my ancestors worship on this mountain, and those ancestors worship on the other mountain, and which is right and which is true. And so it's very interesting about how important it is to do it as he says. So again, this is talking about worship before they come into the Holy Land. And he goes, and he's telling them, don't be bringing me offerings. Don't be doing your sacrifices. And I'm going to read it to you verbatim here in a second. He says, rather, you are to come to the place where Adonai, your God, will put his name. He will choose it from all your tribes, and you will seek out that place, which is where he will live, and go there. You will bring there your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tenths, the offerings that you are to give, the offerings that you have vowed, your voluntary offerings, your worship, and the firstborn of your cattle and sheep. Be careful. This is Deuteronomy chapter 12, chapter 12, we're now in verse 14. Be careful not to offer your burnt offerings just anywhere you see. Be careful not to come worship just any old way you want to, or which any old kind of way you see in your heart or your mind. Be careful not to bring sacrifice and worship unto the Father just any old way you feel like it. Be careful, it says. Be careful not to do it just anywhere you see, but do it in the place Adonai will choose. Who will choose? Who does it say? Is it to say you get to choose how you want to sacrifice and bring worship or bring offering unto him? Does it say you get to choose, or does it say anything but choose? This is going to have a great tie-in a second as well too, about the temple that he chooses. About the temple that he chooses. Now folks, this is about to get really deep. And again, as Nigel likes to say, without spiritual understanding, you will have no idea what I'm talking about. But with the Ruach, you will understand something in a second, because the holy temple is a place that he chooses. You're going to see the tie-in a second. Now, be careful, it says. It says, be careful not to offer your burnt offerings just anywhere you see, but do it in the place Adonai will choose, in one of your tribal territories. There is where you are to offer your burnt offerings, and do everything I order you to do. Everything I order you. Now again, we've all heard me say not suggestion, but he said everything I order you to do. All right. Only the things set aside for God which you have, and the vows you have vowed to make, you must take and go to the place which Adonai will choose. There you will offer your burnt offerings, the meat and the blood, and the altar of Adonai your God. The blood of your sacrifice is to be poured out on the altar of Adonai your God, and you will eat the meat. Obey, verse 28, obey and pay attention to everything I am ordering you to do, so that things will go well with you and with your descendants after you forever, as you do what Adonai sees good, fit, and right. Now, again, we're talking about the Old Covenant. We're talking about the children of Israel, but we're talking about the same God. We're talking about the same Yahweh, the same Father of lights that is the same yesterday, today, and forever. We're talking about the things that they did not know what he meant back then, but that would come to the light as the apostles would give utterance of the mysteries. The things that would come to light as Yeshua gave them the Ruach HaKodesh, that they could understand. And I will show you again what it says. As things were said, this is what he meant. So again, bear with me. We are now going to 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19. Or don't you know that your body is a temple for the Ruach HaKodesh, who lives inside you, whom you received from Yahweh? The fact is, you don't belong to yourselves. I might have to repeat that here in a second. The fact is that you are a temple. Now, very interesting. So again, we now want to go to Romans chapter 12, verse 1 through 2. I exhort you therefore, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer yourselves as a sacrifice. People, I need you to understand that we just went from Devarim. We've just left Corinthians. We are now in Romans. And we are talking about something that he chooses. Something that he chooses. All right? Something that we are to offer. Because sacrifices don't have anything to do with us anymore. To offer yourselves as a sacrifice, living and set apart for Yahweh. This will please him It is the logical temple worship. It is the logical. Your body is the temple in whom He chose for the Ruach HaKodesh to dwell, and your body is the living sacrifice in obedience as He commanded and ordered you to do for your acceptable and your holy temple worship. Are you starting to catch a little bit of the picture of what I'm trying to tell you, what He has been saying from the beginning and now to the end? It is the logical temple worship for you. In other words, do not let yourselves be conformed to the standards of the Olam Hazel or to the world. Instead, keep letting yourselves be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you will know what God wants and will agree that what He wants is good. You can't even agree with what is good with Him until you know His will, until you have His temple, and until you've offered yourself a living sacrifice that He has empowered you to do, because He chose you and He chose where to place His temple, and He chose the sacrifice in which His Holy Spirit dwells. You. Again, this is going to be deep, so you better hope you have some spiritual understanding. So that you will know what God wants and will agree that what He wants is good, satisfying, and able to succeed. We are not to go to the part that shall tie all this in the beauty of where we are today. Because again, I said that you were just a temple. I'm going to go back to 1 Corinthians 6 and 19. And it says, or don't you know that your body is a temple? Is a temple. It is not the temple. It is a temple. We also must know that we are living stones inside the temple. Woohoo! All right. Here we go. First Kepha, who many of you will call Petros. First Kepha, sorry for the noise beyond. I am in a place where I have to be kind of outside. First Kepha, chapter 2, starting in verse 5. You yourselves, as living stones, are being built into a spiritual house, the spiritual temple, to be the Kohanim, or the royal priest, set apart for God to offer spiritual sacrifices. Again, you are to offer spiritual sacrifices, which are your obedience into the temple that He chose, which is you. Folks, this is about to get deep and about to go. In which you are to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable through Him. Acceptable. Now, how is a sacrifice acceptable? Unless it passes the rules in which were laid down by the one who set down how things are to be done in worship. You see, you can only give an acceptable sacrifice unto the Father. An acceptable one, not an unacceptable sacrifice. You're allowed to worship Him in the acceptable manner and not in just the way you feel. The way He chooses and whom He chooses will bring acceptable sacrifices unto the Father. To offer a spiritual sacrifice acceptable to Him through Yeshua the Messiah. This is why the Tanakh says, look, I am laying a Zion stone, a chosen and precious cornerstone, and whoever rests his trust on it will certainly not be humiliated. Now to you who keep trusting, He is precious. But to those who are not trusting, the very stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Understand, the builders of the ones who thought they had the temple because they thought they could worship how they saw fit. Come on. They thought they could worship how they saw fit. They thought they could bring a sacrifice to wherever they chose. They thought they could bring a sacrifice to what they saw. The builders who had received the building instruction did not follow the building commands. It was all planned that way. It was made that way. But through Yeshua the Messiah, we now can offer our living sacrifice. We can offer our sacrifice in the temples that He chooses as spiritual living stones for the temple and the great spiritual building that He is building. It says, the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Also, He is a stone that will make people stumble, a rock over which they will trip. They are stumbling at the word, disobeying it. What did I tell you about the obedient worship? But but this is one of my favorite parts coming. They are disobeying it, and as had been planned. Man, it's funny because I didn't have the verse memorized at the time, and it's continuing to blow my mind every time that I'm starting to preach this, and it gets deeper and deeper and bigger and clearer and clearer. But I told you it was planned that way. It was planned for them to stumble and fall. And what does he say? As Kepha, one of the forefathers, said? It says specifically they are stumbling at the word, disobeying it, as had been planned. And you don't think he's sovereign? Listen to me. Verse 9 is one of my favorite verses. But you are a chosen people. You are the chosen people. You are the chosen place where you are to be built as his temple, the dwelling place of his Ruach HaKodesh. We are the chosen place for the temple to be built in, for the Spirit to dwell in. For we are the rocks of the temple. We are the building stones of the temple, and every stone has a portion. It says that every one has been given a portion. They've been given a seed. They have been given a deposit of the Ruach HaKodesh, because his full and holy temple will be all-encompassing dwelling Ruach HaKodesh. And we've all been given a portion, and as he is building us as living stones, he has chosen us as the building stones of his great temple. Whew. But you are a chosen people, the king's royal priesthood, a holy nation. As Brother Nigel was just saying a second ago, we are his holy nation. No nation that you live in is the holy nation, and the only nation that we will pray for is Jerusalem. We are a holy nation. We are a holy people. His chosen people are a holy nation of the kingdom of heaven. We are the chosen. We are the chosen place of worship. We are the chosen place of obedient and acceptable worship. Our obedience, because the Ruach indwells in us, is the acceptable worship given that is acceptable unto him. We ourselves are to be laying down as a living sacrifice. Here it comes again, a holy nation, a people for Yahweh to possess. Why? Why is all this necessary? Why was the disobedience planned? Why was the fake worship planned? Why is all this necessary? In order for you to declare the praises of the one who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. What's it all for? Is there some big scheme? Is there some big secret to the gospel? Is there some big secret to Yahweh's will and his plan? Is there some... Sorry, we got interrupted there. Phone call came in. Is there some big, huge secret? The secret is given to us point blank. In order for you to declare the praises of the one who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. That's what the whole thing's about. That's what the whole glorious setup was about. All the way back to the living stones, the ones why we were called to... He just gave you the whole mystery of the entire will and plan of Yahweh. It's for one answer. All of this. Why is all this happening? Why is all of these things happening? Why does everything happen? It's all to declare his praises for the one who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. It's what it's for. The mystery has been solved. To obediently, it's all, the whole world, the whole plan, the whole everything, the whole glory, the whole gift, the whole story. From the beginning of the foundations of the earth until the end, and everything has fulfilled. Until our resurrection, to all of it, is to obediently worship, to sing praises of the one by the authorized temples that he chose, to give a proper accepted sacrifice, to sing the praises of the one who called us out of darkness into the wondrous light. That's it. I can rest. Ooh, we can rest. We can rest. What's it all for? Why? Why do I have to go through this? Why'd you bring me here? Why'd you choose me? Why? Kiva answered, why? And this is very important who answered it. It's very important who answered why, Kiva. It's very, very important. It's very important who answered it. Folks, if you really knew in depth the story of Kiva, of his shame, of his reconciliation, of his greatest desire, that even Yeshua said, Kiva, do you love me more than these? Listen, I've said many times before that many people that Yeshua might have loved Yochanan more. But who was the disciple that loved Yeshua more? Who is the disciple that wanted, even though he failed many times and he tried in his own strength the hardest, who was the one in his own soul that loved him the most, that wanted to please him more than anybody? Even though he failed miserably in his own strength trying to please him. But the one who wanted to please him, the Lord was very clear. Do you love me more? This is even more than the other apostles. Do you love me more than these? Lord, you know everything. You know. Yochanan might have gotten the revelation. But we know Kiva had a special hunger of wanting to love the Messiah. Sometimes he lacked faith, as we know. We also know that when he was reconciled the second time he jumped out of the boat, it was to run to the one who could forgive him. They were going fishing. He was depressed. He was laid out. He said, I'm done with it all. I'm going fishing. And when he saw him on the shore, he jumped out of the boat again. And he swam to shore. His first time jumping out of the boat wasn't the smartest thing. The last time jumping out of the boat was to swim to the shore, was to swim to the one who could reconcile him and restore him. And he said, why did all these things happen? Why did it all happen? Why did my betrayal happen? Why do you people that stumbled, the people that thought they had why did it all happen? What is this whole plan about? That we might worship in an acceptable way, in an obedient way, in the sanctioned way, to sing the praises of the one who called us out of darkness into the wondrous light. I love you all. Shalom, be blessed. Again, fear not. The world is in a shakeup right now. There may be many challenging times ahead of us. There may be many destructive things that are coming. But know this, that first century church was in a big shakeup too. They had even seen their own city destroyed. Rome was going to crush Israel. Rome was going to crush Israel in around 70 AD. Even the saints had to have their mind blown. They were getting persecuted and killed and strung up and imprisoned. At the same time, they were having faith. The apostles comforted them. Keep your one on the above. Do not fret. This life is bigger than you think. Only when you think it's done, it has just begun. Be blessed. Talk to you all again very soon, if we are allowed, by His will. But I do pray by His grace that we have perseverance and endurance, that we may receive the crown. Shalom to you all.